Welcome to Grösslingovej 53, our Bisla podcast. My name is Tomáš Čorej and I'm very pleased to be here today with our beloved professor Sylvia Tiryaki, who of course specializes in Middle East and Turkey, a country we are going to talk about today. I mean, there are so many things we could be talking about, so many issues we could delve into. We only have limited time, of course, within the scope of a single podcast. So let's think of this podcast as an introduction to this topic, and it's also a good introduction for people who might be thinking about coming to Bisla, because Sylvia's perhaps the best person in Slovakia to talk about Turkey. So I'm very honored to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
So there is an issue we've delved into even like before we started recording, the year you moved into Turkey. So I actually might have read it on a website which spread some misinformation. So maybe start by explaining, when did you actually move to Turkey?
Well, I moved to Turkey in 1999,
Wow,
and then
okay.
I moved out, and then I moved in again.
Uh-huh.
But it was definitely before before Slovakia became a member of European Union,
It
when
was
I
in
started living
2004.
So I mean, I moved with like full luggage. Let's put it that way. In 2000, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
So I started living there at the end of 1999. Then I moved back, and in 2000, late 2000 or the second part of 2000, I started working there, and in 2001 I got married. So so since that time, in 2003 my son was born. So I was very much established and living there.
Dad was in Istanbul, wasn't it?
It was in
the
Istanbul. I moved
capital?
to Istanbul, and I continue living in Istanbul.
Yeah, it's a banal question, but what was it like to move to Turkey in, well, as you said, 1999 or 2000? What were your
I was young.
impressions?
Yeah, I mean, it was like everything is easy when you are young. You are not thinking too much.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure whether it would be very easy for me now to change the countries. You know, like, yeah. I don't know. I mean, but when I was in the 99, in 2000. It was nice. Turkey was a very nice country. It is still a very nice country. Istanbul was and is still a beautiful city, and it was both beautiful and hard. I have great memories and also less nice memories. But yeah, I mean, all those like 20 years I spent there, more or less. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm sorry for it.
So you've mentioned that you do have, I mean, both nice and perhaps not so nice memories from Istanbul. But yeah, let's delve into Istanbul. And I've actually written some notes about the city. And for people like me, who perhaps are not that familiar with Turkey, we know the shortcut, and many people say that Istanbul is the boundary between Europe and Asia, and I know there is some backlash against that. Some people say that it is arbitrary, some people say it's not useful to classify this as that, but well, I'm interested in your take, but also more generally about Istanbul. What kind of city is that, and what significance does it hold for the Turkish society and Turkey itself?
Well, I mean, I would correct you here. I mean, it's not a banal question, and it's definitely not an arbitrary division, because even in Turkish, that side which is on European continent is called European side of Istanbul, and that side that is on Asian or Asia Minor continent is called Asian part of Istanbul. So even Turks themselves or Istanbulian themselves, then they make this division. So the city really lies on both continents, and what is maybe less important is the division in social terms, right, or in demographic terms, or in daily life terms, or in economic terms, or whatever. So geographically, yes, that the cleavage is there, right, and the cleavage is Bosporus, but for like normal life, you just the only problem is the traffic.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need to cross from one side to the other, you have to use either the bridge, and then there are plenty of them now.
Mm-hmm.
You can use metro, you can use tube, and they are like the public transportation in Istanbul, because Istanbul is surrounded by seas, right? It's like you have the Black Sea there, you have Marmara Sea,
Mm-hmm.
and the connection between them is Bosporus. So there is like lots of seaways. So basically, sea taxi, like this hop in hop of the vapur, which is like
Right.
like small boats,
Mhm.
running from one side or zigzagging basically along the Bosporus. So and also like the it's an international water. Yes, it's international strait. That's correct, Bosporus. But in the narrowest part, it is the width is only 750 meters, so it is not really that wide.
Mhm.
And that narrowest part is between Anadolu Hisari and Rumeli Hisari. And see, I mean, Anadolu means actually that Anatolian part. So
Mhm.
they, even in Turkish, they refer to that in geographical terms
Right.
as
So.
such. But Istanbul, yes, I mean, Istanbul is a very important city, and it is not important only for Turkish society. It is important also in general, because it's the largest city of Turkey. It's not the capital city. Capital is Ankara. It's
Mhm.
largest city of Turkey, but it's definitely the economic hub. But for instance, in religious terms, an equivalent to Catholic Vatican,
Mhm.
there is Fener, and Fener is seat to ecumenical church, Orthodox, East Orthodox Church. So with the ecumenical patriarch being
Mm.
there, yes, I mean it has been there since ever. So like when you look at Istanbul from any perspective, you see the importance of the city, and maybe that's why also some people are attracted by it, not even knowing why exactly what it is
Mhm.
actually pulling them there, because the
Mm.
heaviness of the centuries, the heaviness of the cultures, multiple cultures,
Mhm.
it is there, you feel it.
Right. So you've mentioned the what you call the heaviness of the cultures in Istanbul, and also you've mentioned that there might be geographical cleavages between the both sides of the city, but that you wouldn't say there are some. I think you've mentioned socioeconomic cleavages. Is that correct? But so is there a distinct identity associated with Istanbul? Do people who come from Istanbul think of themselves differently than the people from the rest of the country? Is there this kind of tendency?
uh, you have this in every country,
Right.
so it is not specific to Turkey. In Turkey is a country of immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not new. I'm not talking about the migration waves after civil war in Syria started in 2011. The waves of migrants prior to 21st century were always, or have been always, there. So like many people are that were or are living in Istanbul are not originally from Istanbul, and this is not a development in the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
Many people who were born in Istanbul are having parents who are immigrants, either from usually from Balkans and Thracia, because of the wars of the 20th century and the end
Mm-hmm.
of 19th century, or I don't know, like remnants of Crimean War, the end of, as I said, the 19th century. So
Yeah.
you always find someone, when you talk to someone in Turkey, and especially in Istanbul, maybe the second question, if the not first question, is like, where are you from?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when they started asking me where I was from, I was like, okay, I mean, originally I am, and so on and so on and so on. Because when they were asking me after 15 years, I was like, oh my God, like, I mean, still asking this question, like it shouldn't be like that. But this is not, it shouldn't be taken personally, because they ask each other where they are from. Because as I said, like everyone is from somewhere. They are old Istanbulians, but interestingly, old Istanbulians are, for instance, those rooms, right? The Greeks in Turkish there are two words for Greeks. Greeks from Greece,
Right.
Yunanlar,
Mm-hmm.
and Greeks from Turkey, Rumlar. So,
Fascinating detail. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So, I mean, these people, or and we can go and on and on and on to the events of the of 20th century and who, I mean, originally was living in Istanbul. But yes, like generations, they are like old Istanbulian families, for instance, for 3 generations or 4 generations there, and they are newcomers. But if you, I mean, there have been so many, and maybe we will talk about Kurdish issue later on in this podcast. But I have heard many times that like, I mean, the population, the Kurdish population was living there and whatever, and then the division should be, and so on and so on and so on. Well, I mean, the largest Kurdish city in the world is Istanbul.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe that's a long question to your answer to your short question.
No, I mean, and of course, it's true for every country, with the caveat that, as you said, Istanbul is not the capital, right? So it makes it a little bit more interesting. But reading your all interviews, I was, well, I wouldn't say astonished, but perhaps surprised by the fact that you mentioned that when you arrived in Istanbul, you were struck by what you call the work habits by the Turkish. And in one of the interviews, you said that those were similar to those in the United States, which I guess a lot of people might not associate with Istanbul or with the Turkish. So maybe could you talk about that a bit? I think it's fascinating that you compared Istanbul, or the Istanbul of 2000 or 2003, to the United States.
Oh, it was even earlier because Turkish society was a very heavily capitalist society. And I compare it with the U.S. because that's another capitalist, and the capitalist society, right?
The symbol of capitalism, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, and with that, working very hard comes, right? So here in Europe, we Europeans, I mean, I hope people will not get me wrong, but we like having our lunches.
Like work-life balance, right?
Yeah, a bit laid back, and this was not the case in Turkey. So when I started working I was working as a lawyer in the beginning for because there was a very heavy economic crisis when I moved to Turkey. I mean, it was the Black Wednesday, and I mean, that's a long story, but yes, I mean, that was it was not nice economically and otherwise to live there. Like the unemployment was really huge, and to get a job was close to impossible.
Especially for a foreigner, I would guess.
Oh, I mean, there were so many people laid off after this crisis that even for a local it was a miracle. So people were shifting from bankers to, I mean, any job they could do, and so on and so on. So as I said, like, it was a very heavy banking and economic crisis. That's why Turkey was actually resilient in 2008, in the crisis, the global crisis in 2008, because they tried it in 2000, so 2001. Yeah, so I mean, that was it was quite easy. It was not easy, but it was easier for them. Yeah, so when I started working there, it was, first of all, it was this context, like macro context, and the micro context was that I was trying to have my lunch in the office. Yeah? And then I look around, and everyone was having sandwich in his or her hand behind the computer, right? And I was like, 12, 12:30, 1. I was like, it's time to go, my 45 minutes or something.
Right.
No way. You order a sandwich or you order something and you continue working. And we were really staying there. Many times I was working till 11 in the evening.
Wow.
So this was private sector. As I said, I was working as a lawyer. but yeah, I mean, it was not what I was used to, and I was working hard here, right? In
Right.
Slovakia, it was not that I was
Of
coming from
course, anyone who knows Sylvia is perfectly aware of the fact that you're not a person who wouldn't be working very hard or yeah.
no. So I mean, this is what I meant actually. That it was really tough environment, and it is still so. People are having. I myself, I was having three jobs at the same time.
Mm.
I was teaching at the university. I was a senior researcher at a think tank. Then I was co-running a think tank, and also I was a columnist in newspapers.
Mm.
So, and you know, Tomáš, very well that even writing one column per week,
Right.
it's not that 1 hour
Takes
behind
a lot
computer.
of
It takes lots of
consistency
time
and
and preparations
and preparation.
research and
So
so on.
so
and
so
so
ha-
on.
has that changed over the past 2 decades, or is that still true with regards to the
Oh,
Turkish
well, there is
society?
another crisis, right?
Right.
Like Turkey is in economically very bad terms.
Mhm.
So no, things did not change. I don't think they haven't changed much.
Mhm.
I know that people work hard. It depends in which sector you work. It depends
course.
what you do. But in general, yes, I mean, Turkish society is a hardworking
Mhm.
society.
Right. Very very interesting. So maybe let's delve into Istanbul slightly more. Um, I wonder how much the city has changed over the past 20 years. And one way to look at it is, of course, well, demographics, right? At the start of the millennium, when you arrived in Istanbul, the city might have had around like 10 million residents. Of course, it will depend on the methodology or on the estimate based on geography, but right now it's over 17, some would say perhaps 20 million. So, what are the perhaps most significant changes you think that Istanbul has been through, or in what way has Istanbul changed, if it has?
It is not easy to live in Istanbul.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when we complain here in Bratislava about traffic, I mean, I have to actually, I have to tell myself like, okay, this is amazing. Just
Right.
stop complaining. This is not the traffic.
Mm.
So yes, I mean, so one of the main things is that people move and change their residence according to the place where they work, so they don't need to commute too much. Because commuting, I'll tell you, I had to drive to university from where I was living because there was no public transportation.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent from 1.5 to 2 hours every morning and every evening. This was an average in the car.
So working the whole day and then commuting for
altogether
2 extra hours.
yes. Once I stayed when it snowed and the highway was blocked. I stayed in the car for 8 hours.
Wow.
So like these things can happen, and it is definitely happening still now. The constructions, the house. I mean, there are new construction sites in Istanbul. New roads are built, and so on and so on and so on. The also public transportation got better, but because of the, as you said, like I mean, the Istanbul got swollen. It's a much larger city than it used to be, and you see that. And Istanbulians themselves, they say from time to time when they are actually joking and they are having fun from themselves that okay, I mean, we have spoiled the city so much, and still we haven't managed to destroy its beauty. That it's beautiful despite of the fact how it is.
Well,
How-
it would take a lot of effort to destroy the beauty of
So-
Istanbul, right?
Still, it is beautiful, yeah. But this is the major change. I mean, you see that. You also see the effects of migration. That's you see the multilingual. I don't know. Yeah, the spirit of the city.
Right,
It
right,
didn't
right.
used to be there. before the war in Syria started. Yeah, and so on and so on and so on. Yeah, so beauty is still there, but much more concrete, much more high rise and such stuff, and
Right.
much less free time because you have to commute.
Commute, yeah. So around the time you arrived in Istanbul, Turkey became an European Union candidate country. If I'm correct, and so Slovakia had not been an EU country back then, but it would become one in, as we said, in 2004. Perhaps do you remember the I'm sure you do, but what were the relations between EU and Turkey back then, and did the people you used to work with actually believe that it kind of was inevitable that Turkey would become an EU member state, or did it not seem realistic back then? Perhaps what was it like in early mm, in early millennium?
Well, I mean, Turkey signed association agreement, so-called Ankara Agreement, with Europe, back then European communities, in 1963.
A long time ago, yeah.
So since 1963, Turks really have had lots of time to learn about European Union, whereabouts, what it is about, how it works, structure, and so on and so on. And my first thesis, it's called rigorozne, rigorozna práca. I don't even know how to translate that.
Right, an academic paper, we could say.
Like to earn my doctorate degree, I had to write it. It was about approximation of Slovak law with acquis communautaire.
Right.
So, and then I moved to Turkey, and I felt very much equipped and knowledgeable, and I thought that I'm gonna tell them now how it is with European Union. And then I realized that almost in every single larger village they had this European Union center with European Union flag. And people now I consider as my colleagues were actually traveling all around Anatolia teaching European Union. And so without using this word in a pejorative way, villagers, they knew very well how European Union was functioning. This was not the case in Slovakia, you know. I mean, we just jumped in somehow, and then on the way we were, you know, learning how it worked.
Also, Slovakia is a tiny country, right? So.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, I know very well how it was because I was working on the topic here and I was working on the topic there. So the comparison was quite striking and humbling experience for me. So they knew very well what it was about. They knew very well what to expect, and at the same time, they also were claiming that never. It doesn't matter what they do. Turkey is a predominantly Muslim country, and because of this reason, it would never be accepted as a full member of European Union. So when we had this candid conversation among ourselves, this was always like, okay, but the harmonization process is great if we actually can get the, and in 2005 Turkey it started negotiating. That would be great. What happened later on was many times, in my view, unnecessary. I mean, freezing the chapters, the negotiation chapters, in Turkish negotiation process from European Union member states. Yeah, so chapters like, for instance, on judiciary, education. I don't know, human rights and so on and so on. These were frozen, and the process was stalled for very different reasons, and it backfired because Turkey then stopped, you know,
moved away from.
Yeah, it stopped that approximation, that harmonization,
right.
And it didn't need to do it, so it didn't do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and it was going on and on and on till, for specific reasons, and then the reasons were were there.
Mm.
It's enough to read Commission reports about enlargement.
Mm-hmm.
It got totally blocked. So now, basically, it's very difficult. Now we can talk about bilateral relations between European Union member states and Turkey, and cooperation between European Union and Turkey on security issues, this and that issues, maybe visa liberation and migration deal, and so on and so on and so on. But the negotiations are not there.
Right.
In my view, it's a pity. I mean, professionally, I paid lots of attention, and also I paid price because I was a believer in Turkey's EU membership.
Right. So the whole topic of the Turkish potential membership in the European Union would deserve a whole episode, I'm sure. But so I think there is a paradoxical situation right now in which most experts, I think, would say that the membership right now seems quite unrealistic. Yet, on the other hand, many European leaders and European Commission itself struggle to condemn Turkey for several reasons, and perhaps because European Union, as you've said, kind of needs Turkey, right? And there are again several factors here, but most often experts would point out to Syria, would point out to migration, would point out to Ukraine. So there is a situation in which we are not accepting Turkey, yet we rely on Turkey. Is that fair? Is that a fair assessment?
Well, I mean, of course we need each other. We are not that far from each other. So we need to cooperate. Ideally, we should cooperate in a warm atmosphere and not being forced into cooperation. As I said, it would be nicer if the negotiations were ongoing. They are not. Now, whether we need Turkey only because of migration, whether we need Turkey only because of Syria, whether we need Turkey, and so on and so on and so on. Well, I mean, I think it's far more complicated than that. And I think these things could have been solved hadn't the European Union been so much bureaucratically constructed. Yeah. But that's how European Union is, so there was no other way how to avoid this. So I'm 100% sure that people in EU, some people in EU in the positions very important for this, are aware of how the things could have been managed, and that they would be better now. But I would definitely agree with you that Turkey is important for European Union security. And when you look at entire European Union, I wouldn't call it shift, but let's say progression towards more like the geostrategic necessity is there. It's in daily language of European Union. It was more in the past. It was more about democratization abroad, respect for this and that. Now it's security, and this is something that that is fair. That's how the world is. How
in
the situation
life
is.
of a war in the eastern neighborhood, in the light of
exactly
an unpredictable president in the United States.
Exactly, and Turkey is a NATO member, a very old NATO member, very powerful NATO member. So it would be silly to cut the relationships off. Yet it shouldn't be at all cost, and it is what it is for the time being, and we are cooperating at the bilateral level. Italy, Slovakia, Hungary. I mean, there are bilateral relations ongoing between these two countries.
Right, Prime Minister Fico visiting Turkey.
Yeah,
I think this year or last year was it?
It was this year,
This
the
year.
beginning of this year, with a couple of ministers, and It was a very high-level visit.
Mm-hmm.
Now recently, Italian Meloni invited Erdogan. He was in Italy. They also signed the pact on security and so on and so on. Interestingly, these are the countries that were trying also to maintain relationships with the Damascus before Assad fall. So now, it's Turkey is playing quite an interesting role in Syria's day-to-day business.
Mm-hmm.
So as I said, like it's far more complicated than it seems.
I'm very happy you're mentioning Syria, because that's a topic I'd like to, well, at least briefly discuss, because as you've mentioned that Turkey right now seems to be playing a very important role in Syria. Of course, last December the regime of Bashar al-Assad was overthrown by the HTS, which I always struggle to pronounce, but I think it's Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group. So the group is kind of widely linked to Turkey, and that's kind of my question. How much influence does Turkey have in Syria? Perhaps to what extent was Turkey involved in what happened last December?
Well, I mean, Turkey has been traditionally backing Sunni rebels in Syria, and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, you pronounce it correctly,
Great.
was one of those, let's say, offshoots of original group of resistance fighters. I mean, it developed and redeveloped and restructured and so on and so on and so on. Current Syrian leader, al-Shara, well, I mean, he's having in his CV both Al-Qaeda, because he established al-Nusra, and al-Nusra was an offshoot of Al-Qaeda. Then he was fighting Al-Qaeda. He's having on his CV also ISIS. He was fighting that as well. Now, I mean, yeah, people say that he's a charismatic leader. Obviously he is, and obviously also he understands that running Damascus or from Damascus is not running Idlib, right? Because that's where he was his stronghold.
He used to govern.
Yeah, he used to govern that province, and with specific demography, right? So I mean, but Syria is having different demography,
much more
than
diverse.
Idlib. So the diversity is dictating his statecraft as well. So, and Turkey has been supporting of him since the beginning. I don't think that Turkey orchestrated anything. I think that simply Turkey just allowed it happen, if you wish so. And Turkey is there, and I mean, it's the closest ally of Syria now. So maybe some are overestimating the power of Ankara.
President Trump, right, saying that it was basically the Turkish who overthrew Assad's government.
Yeah. That he said that actually Erdogan managed to do what nobody did in 2,000 years. Now, okay, let's not exaggerate. Yeah. So, but
I hope President Trump will listen to this podcast so that he is educated on the topic.
Yes. So, I mean, let's not exaggerate. Let's not throw this, huge words. But so basically Turkey is there. Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, he has been instrumental in contacts between Syrian rebels in his past function or job or whatever for many years, and so they know each other. They know what they stand for, and Turkey's vision for Syria, for future Syria, is a sort of like a vision of itself, right? Like a conservative, very centralized state. And this vision is also exposed or transmitted to al-Shara. And al-Shara now, with his latest deal with SDF, the Syrian Defense Forces, when like the deal is about incorporating the Kurdish forces, right, into the official Syrian army, just shown that It's not. He's definitely not standing for a decentralized Syria that would. But at the same time, he claims that he would respect the minority rights, that he would protect all Syrians without any without making any difference among them, and so on and so on.
So what's the main interest of Turkey in Syria right now? You've mentioned the deal with the Kurdish forces, SDF. What does?
Well, I mean, SDF is an offshoot of PKK,
Right.
And PKK is the Kurdish Workers' Party, which is a designated terrorist organization also
By
by European Union,
yeah.
Turkey, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is for Turkey, it's security. And the Kurds, if you remember, since 2012, they so 1 year after the civil war started, they started building the autonomous region in Rojava. And this autonomous region covered at the end 1/3 of the territory and 70% of oil reserves. So that's the answer partially to your question. Second question is which is connected to this one, or second answer which is connected to the first one, is security, because Turkey is definitely not happy with such a congregation and centralization of Kurdish power that on its borders, right? So it has been trying to destroy that belt, because when you look at the map, it is sort of like a geographically it looks like a belt, right, along the borders. So the decentralization of this region and the actually destruction, at least partial, of this autonomy is in interest of Turkey. So
Right.
these are the two main points. I mean, there are many more, because the construction companies of Turkey are known to be quite effective in many regions all around the world. So I'm sure that they will get business deals in Syria, and they are doing it.
So yeah,
for the time
one
being as
one country which has been like particularly active with regards to Syria has been Israel, which of course has been targeting different sites within Syria, and I wonder, maybe in light of very harsh criticism by the Turkish leadership in with regards to the Israeli invasion of the Gaza Strip. What's the state of the relations between Turkey and Israel, and is it exaggerated to be talking about a certain proxy conflict in Syria? Is there anything like that? What's the state of the relations?
I mean, Turkish-Israeli relations are not good, and they are not good since 2010, since Mavi Marmara incident, and they are let's say. They have never got back to pre-2010 state, which was much better than what you see now.
Which they kind of, I wouldn't say they were allies, but they used to work quite effectively, right?
Well, I mean, Turkey was the first Muslim country that recognized State of Israel, and they were cooperating. Like their services were very closely cooperating. They are still cooperating. I mean, it's not correct to say that they don't look into eyes. Yeah, they do.
The deeds don't exactly match the rhetorics, right? Which is like very strong.
Not always. Yeah. And it wouldn't be wise for either of them, right? So there is domestic audience, there is an international audience, and so on and so on and so on. But Foreign Minister of Turkey, Hakan Fidan, recently said that they have no desire to go into conflict with Israel and Syria. Actually, that they have no desire to go to conflict with any country in Syria. And they had a meeting on, I think, on 10th of April or the beginning of April in Azerbaijan, the Turkish and Israeli representatives, and they were talking about these contentious issues in the region and what to do and what not to do. So I don't think that they would go into any proxy war in Syria, because for neither of them is a smart move.
Mm.
You have to also realize that with Turkey in, Iran is out.
Mm.
Yeah. So whatever Israel says, I mean, it's a still better option, right, for them. And
Right.
Iran with its pseudo Marshall Plan that they were trying to maybe not impose, but
Yes.
execute.
Mm.
Execute is a better word in Syria. I mean, that was definitely the greater threat and danger. So this is effectively out.
Yeah.
The economic aid wouldn't come from from Iran.
Right,
So it's
yeah.
always better for Israel if it comes from Turkey,
Mhm.
and they will find their way.
Yeah. Well, so for the very last look, the issue of the Russian war against Ukraine, which happens to be the fundamental issue for us here in Central Eastern Europe. So what do you think the Turkish position really is, as Turkey um, often affirms the Ukrainian territorial integrity, often emphasizing the importance of the Crimean Peninsula, which might also have to do with Crimean Tatars who live there, who are, of course, Muslims, so that might play some significance in there. On the other hand, the Turkish leadership continues to have and maintain relations with Russia. So, what role do you think that Turkey is playing within the conflict, and what how would you describe its position?
When you talk to Turks, they will tell you that their geography is predetermining
Mm.
their politics. So they always say that their geopolitical position will not, the way how it is actually geographically constructed will not change, and the fact that they have neighbors as they do is a predetermining factor in their foreign policy. So this is how they have been behaving, and with Russia, I mean, historically. They were not very close allies, right? Like they fought 19th century, the late 19th century Crimean Wars, not the only one.
Very nice way to put it, that they have historically not been good friends, right?
So so I mentioned Crimean Wars. Now, Crimean Tatars, they also feel not only ethnically related to Turkey, but many times politically. And they've been numerous visits by them in Ankara. They don't live only in Crimea, right? I mean, they live elsewhere, and they are good allies of Turkey.
In Uzbekistan, perhaps because of the deportations which took place in the 40s, but that's a complicated issue we might not be delving into right now.
As well. So that's they sort of like they feel sort of like protected by Turkey, and so I mean there are many more issues we might remember under what circumstances Turkey bought S-400, right? The system. It was actually maneuvered into that, in my view. Maybe with local help as well. That's what I wouldn't dare to say or assess, but yes. So Turkey has been trying to balance this. I wouldn't say that personal relations between Putin and Erdogan doesn't play a role. It does, certainly. So I mean, when the relationships are good between countries, is many times about the leaders, right?
Right. So you would describe those relations as pragmatic between Putin and Erdogan, or straight like positive? Well,
it's. I think with Erdogan is most of the time pragmatic, and it depends on the circumstances how the pragmatism is shown. But I think he, as a leader, he can show the high, and he has shown the high volume of pragmatism many times. So Turkey is also like a part of this geostrategic position. That is actually predetermining the direction, the foreign policy direction. It's also something that Turkey and Russia they have in common, and it's a mistrust of West, right? That they also believe that West doesn't understand them, and whatever they do, West will never be a good ally, and they cannot rely on West. Again, historically, they can tell you couple of reasons why. I mean, in Turkey, it is the First World War and the reminiscence and the beginning, basically, of it, and so on, and so on.
Well,
So
perhaps also the very first issue we talked about today, the European Union, right? So the mistrust which
yeah,
might be
I mean,
looming
that
there.
came later, like
Yeah.
the Sever syndrome from the First World War is still there.
Trying to make a
it's
full circle with this episode, yeah.
So I mean, yeah. So Turkey, and also we shouldn't forget that Turkey was neutral in the Second World War. Yeah. So I mean, it is I see that it's Turkey will not be, if it doesn't need to be on anyone's side fully. It will be following its own course in its own interest.
Right, on that note, and we could be discussing so many other issues, including President Trump, or dedicating more time to Syria and Ukraine and so on. I'm very pleased and honored that we had Professor Sylvia Tiryaki with us today, and thank you very much for listening to us.
Thank you.